Hypergamy is often framed as something toxic about women, but the truth is, it can actually help you build a stronger relationship. I see so many women today discovering concepts like hypergamy through red pill content, and instead of feeling good about themselves because of their nature, they walk away feeling ashamed of it. They start believing that something is inherently wrong with them for being a woman, and that guilt sometimes even leads them to tolerate poor treatment from men as if it's some kind of punishment that they deserve. And that's exactly why I'm making this video, because hypergamy isn't something that women need to feel guilty about. When you understand it properly, it can actually help you, but there are some behaviors that women do fall into because of hypergamy that we do need to be aware of. If we are not aware of this, then it can cause damage. We're going to talk about how to recognize hypergamy in yourself and how to use that awareness in a way that strengthens your relationships rather than sabotaging them. Hypergamy, hypergamy, hypergamy. No red pill YouTube channel would be complete without some mention of hypergamy. But I'm going to be the first to admit that this is one of my least favorite topics in the red pill, and not because it doesn't exist, but because of the discussion surrounding it. If you've just arrived on the red pill scene, you might be wondering what this fancy word even means. Well, hypergamy is the tendency for women to marry up. As a man might try to marry the prettiest partner who will have him, women tend to fall in love with attractive men who are wealthier than them, more attractive than them, more ambitious than them, more something than them. Problem arises because this biological imperative does not magically disappear when a woman enters a relationship. A woman might continue to try to trade up her current relationship partner for a higher status male should the option present itself. With the red pill being a very male-centric space, you can imagine that the discussion surrounding hypergamy is not very pleasant. There are a lot of men who have had their egos bruised when they were passed over for other guys. And there have also, unfortunately, been many men who have been cheated on. Because of this, a lot of the current conversation about hypergamy revolves around a general mistrust of women and the idea that all women are like that. All women are eventually going to cheat and no woman can be trusted. You might also hear things going around like, she's not yours, it's just your turn. Or that if a woman breaks things off with a man, then she must have found herself a monkey branch. And this means a new man to go to. So she doesn't have a period of being single. She just goes from one man to the other. Because a woman would never leave a man unless if there is somebody else in the picture, right? If this all sounds a little silly to you, well, you're not wrong. I know that there are some women out there who do genuinely have a hard time staying faithful, and they can immediately see themselves in this red pill hypergamy stereotype. There are some young women who have been introduced to the red pill oftentimes through a boyfriend or online material, and they hear about hypergamy and the attitude towards women, and they begin to carry around this weight of hypergamy like some sort of original sin. They've been convinced that they must accept poor treatment because of their wicked inborn natures. And when I hear about this, it's truly heartbreaking. However, I'm going to guess that most women probably do not identify with hypergamy at all. I am willing to bet that most of you viewers are not on Tinder actively seeking to replace your current partner. And you know what? If that is you, stop. Just stop. Okay? You can color me as naive as you want, but cheating is not something that I come across a lot in my personal life. It would be a very rare scandal if it happened amongst my friends and acquaintances. And if it is happening, well, I suppose that they are keeping quiet about it and trying to work out those issues amongst themselves. But faithfulness really is the norm with the people that I associate with. Cheating is definitely not considered some sort of inevitability. So if we don't view ourselves as these promiscuous, backstabbing Jezebels, does that mean hypergamy doesn't even exist? Is it a mere figment of the scorned male imagination? Well, here's my take. With all my disdain for the current conversation, you might think that I don't believe in hypergamy. Well, I do. Hypergamy is a real thing. If we go back to our basic definition of hypergamy as marrying up, we do see that women like to form relationships with men who have like a higher status or wealth or at least potential. Women are attracted to men who are likely to be successful in life. Shocking. After a woman gets into a relationship, attractive men are still attractive. Again, this is shocking news to many of you. That being said, this does not mean that any woman is just going to immediately and mercilessly dump her current partner for the first attractive man that she happens to come in contact with. No, no, no. Hypergamy is so much more subtle than that. Rather than just saying hypergamy is real, so women are bad, I would like to have a conversation about hypergamy that is actually useful for women. So let's take a look at some common ways that hypergamy actually presents itself so that we can recognize it. And if we can recognize hypergamy, then we can combat its more negative effects. One really common way that hypergamy shows up, especially during the dating stage, is with what I like to call Little Miss Picky. Now, Little Miss Picky is someone who maybe is constantly turning down suitors for minor reasons. That one's nose is too big, and that one over there likes Star Trek. And she could never, ever be with a guy who collects bottle caps. If you find yourself sabotaging perfectly happy and healthy relationships for the silliest of reasons or for minor differences, you might also be Little Miss Picky. You're picking fights over the direction of the toilet paper, and maybe your last boyfriend, his personal interpretation of the Barbie movie caused your latest breakup. If this describes you at all, it could be your hypergamy instinct on overdrive. No matter how good and wonderful a man is, you are constantly going to be searching for someone who is just that much better than who you have. I want to be clear. I am not saying that you have to settle for somebody that you simply aren't attracted to or that you have massive life differences with. But is it possible that maybe you're just being a little bit too picky? Our next example of hypergamy is someone who is maybe in the beginning stages of dating multiple men. So you're not in a relationship, but you are dating around trying to find that someone. And as you're doing this, you just can't seem to find somebody that you're ready to commit to. And this could actually be hypergamy at work again. There might be, in this instance, that one special guy who's caught your eye. And if that guy wanted to be with you, you would drop those other guys in a heartbeat. You know deep, deep down that you're not really into the men that you're dating. And you might tell yourself some nice lies like, oh, he's really nice, and maybe if I just give him a chance. Or maybe you convince yourself that you're sparing his feelings by keeping things going. What you are really doing is holding out for the man that you really want while keeping these guys as backups. And if you were really honest with yourself, you would stop stringing them along. The kind thing in this situation would be to let them move on to greener pastures. This next example is really common. You've heard this before. We're just friends. You've at least had the courage to tell these guys that you're not romantically interested in them. But you know that they would jump at the chance to be your next boyfriend. In the red pill, these guys are referred to as beta orbiters. These are the guys who are waiting in the eaves to swoop in and save you after what they see as your next inevitable breakup. They think that at that point you're magically going to see what they've already known all along, that they are the perfect man for you. Now, you could distance yourself from these guys, but you've been honest about your intentions, so you push it back onto them. And besides, maybe you're flattered by their intentions, so you just keep them around. Another version of this we're just friends is a little bit more insidious. This happens with a married woman. And in this variation, the woman will keep in close contact with her male friends. She's going to continue going to lunch with them and messaging them and going out to dinner with them, even as she's married. She might also vent to these male friends about her troubles and what's going on in her relationship. She's going to tell herself that they're just friends, but she probably knows that her friend cares for her a little bit more than is appropriate. And anybody with half a brain cell would be able to see what's going on. Somehow, this friend is always the one who she ends up with when she falls out of love with her current partner. Isn't that funny how that works? Our next way is a little bit more sneaky. This form of hypergamy shows up for women in their fantasy life. If you catch yourself daydreaming about the handsome new acquaintance or imagining your friend's perfect life with her perfect husband, it could be the sneaky beginnings of hypergamy. Even if you are in a perfectly happy and healthy relationship, your hypergamous nature might make you begin to wonder, what if, and wouldn't it be great if? When not recognized, this type of thinking can start to sow discontent in what was a happy relationship. The next way that we see hypergamy actually showing up is another sneaky way. It worms its way into happy marriages with fault finding. And yes, we all have our flaws and we all make mistakes. Sometimes these get blown out of proportion. This seems to be especially true when you're living in close quarters with someone for an extended period of time. And sometimes it's not small annoyances, I'll grant you, but real bigger problems that go unresolved. In a marriage or long-term relationship, this kind of picking away at the other person can lead to feeling like just about anybody would be a better option than their current spouse. It then becomes very easy to justify extramarital affairs as his fault. Oh, he never does anything around the house. He doesn't appreciate me. He's smothering. He's controlling. He just isn't doing anything with his life. I feel like we're going different directions. These may or may not be valid gripes to be worked on, but they shouldn't be used to excuse your wandering eyes or a wandering heart. Our next form of hypergamy comes with a woman who is never sure of her decision to be in her relationship in the first place. This woman might be with her man because she was tired of being single, or maybe due to religious or social pressures or familial pressures, or maybe she just felt like he was the best she could find. Her hypergamy in this sort of relationship is going to plague her. She's always going to wonder if she made the right decision in settling down with her man. She is going to tell herself, what if, or did I make the right decision? Okay, I'm coming back after I made the video. I'm coming back in selfie mode. This is lower resolution. I already put away all my equipment, but I know that I would just get roasted if I didn't put this in this video, because this is the most stereotypical example that people like to use when talking about hypergamy. This is, of course, talking about modern online dating apps. Apps like Tinder are the most common way to meet people nowadays, and it presents a unique opportunity to see hypergamy in play. So women, of course, want to get the best possible man that they can. It is not an uncommon scenario for a woman to receive a lot of matches. Too many matches for her even to go through. And so what will she do? She will, of course, try to narrow those matches down to a reasonable number. She gets out her little wish list, and she of course tries to get the very best man. And so this is where you get that 666. She's narrowing down, okay, well, I have 1,000 matches, so let's only take guys who are over 6 feet tall. Wouldn't that be cool if he was a tall guy? Or I want somebody really fit, or by income. So the 666 stereotype, she is narrowing down this massive list of men to something that she can reasonably go on dates with and engage in. So the problem for her ends up that these guys that she is selecting are the same men that every other woman out there is selecting for. What will happen is these guys, they are the top 10% of men on the apps, and they are getting all of the dates. The rest of the men on apps really struggle to make matches. That's the problem for men. The problem for the women is that these top guys are also getting lots of women. And so they will go and just cycle through these women. You might be a good enough match for that man to have a fun night with, but that doesn't mean that you are good enough that he would qualify you for a relationship. You're good enough to sleep with, you're not good enough to stay with. And so if you are running into a problem where you're dating online and you are able to secure matches, but you're unable to keep matches, and that in your search for the very best man, you are perhaps overestimating what a catch you are. You might not be a good enough catch to secure that type of man. And so it really hurts both men and women. It's great for those top 20% of guys who are able to get the dates. But for the rest of the 80% of men, they really, really struggle to find women to go on dates with. But it also hurts women because they get unrealistic expectations for what they can secure. If you fall into this category, if you are having trouble getting second and third dates, getting into a relationship with the kind of guy that you match with on your social media app, then maybe it's just time for honest reflection. Are you fit and healthy? Do you have a good personality? Are you an interesting person? Are you matching with people who share your value system? Those sorts of things. Are you going to be a catch for the type of man that you want? So there it is. That is my little insert that you guys can't roast me for it now. I put it in. As you can see, most of these examples of hypergamy do not mean that you are some sort of mustachioed villain. And this is why hypergamy can so easily enter into a relationship and why it can be so hard to detect. My aim is above all to be useful. And if we can recognize hypergamy as it's happening, then we can squash those negative side effects. Now that we know what hypergamy looks like, what can we do about it? Well, I have great news for a lot of you. A lot of you probably don't have to do anything. We have been instilled with morals and values since we were very young. Our parents, religion, and just society at large have done an excellent job beating into us the importance of right and wrong. We know that lying and cheating are immoral, and we have a sense of duty and commitment. What's more, life has taught us to be empathetic. We either know ourselves what it feels like to be betrayed, or we can at least place ourselves into the shoes of our partner and imagine how hurtful it would be to be cheated on or cast aside. This alone can be enough to deter hypergamy. I do want to recognize that however true this might be for many of you, there are also going to be some of you out there who have never had good examples in life and maybe have yet to develop empathy. If this describes you, don't despair. You can still work on becoming a person who is moral and empathetic. And of course, a good starting place for that would be the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you wouldn't like someone to do it to you, don't do it to someone else. My next tip for overcoming hypergamy, if you are somebody who falls into our overly picky category, try and be realistic and be honest. Be honest about what you want from a relationship and be honest about what qualities are actually essential for your ideal and what things really matter. You might find that a driven man with a cool head is far going to outweigh that full head of hair that you've been chasing. Or a man with even a moderate income and secure financial plan will be a lot better for you than a man who's flashy and exorbitant in his spending. A guy who takes reasonable care of his health is probably going to bring you just as much long-term satisfaction as a guy with a six-pack. You are also going to want to be honest in your evaluation of yourself. If the men you are dating are constantly missing the mark, then is it possible that you are not the type of woman who that type of man would be attracted to? Speaking of being honest, it's a good idea to be honest with any men who you are casually dating or who are friend-zoned. If you're just keeping these guys around as some sort of validation or backup plan, or if you know that they are just hurting inside pining for you, then the kind thing to do would be to gently disassociate yourself with them. This next tip for keeping hypergamy at bay is a very controversial one, even within the women's red pill space. And a lot of conservative folks have taken flack for saying it. I'm going to take flack for saying it, but I am going to tell you anyways because it is extraordinarily effective. Don't have close male friends. If you are not relying on other men physically or emotionally, if you're not building experiences with other men and not giving other men false hope, then the likelihood of you falling in love with another man is dramatically lowered. If you are someone who has a lot of close male friends, then it might seem really callous at first to distance yourself from them, but at least for the sake of your long-term romantic relationship, that would be the healthy thing to do. I want to be clear, I'm not saying that you should never talk to another man again, or that you need to immediately go block all your male associations. I'm just saying, consider how you are interacting with other men. Some recommendations that I have regarding this would be not to initiate text or social media messaging with guys. If you have strange men DMing you on your social media platforms, block them. You don't need to let them into your life. It may be that you have a male friend or acquaintance who tries to often engage you in personal topics about himself. And if there's somebody who's doing this a lot, maybe it's best to kindly suggest that you're not the best person to give him advice, and he would be better served talking to someone else about it. Or maybe rather than asking you for advice, maybe he's prying into your relationship. And I think it's perfectly fair to say to him that you're not comfortable with that conversation and not to engage with him further. If you have a lot of social engagements, then make sure that they're in group settings, preferably with your partner there if he'll be there, but don't put yourself in a situation where you're alone with another man. Let's say you are friends with other couples. In that instance, your invitations and communications would be sent to the woman instead of the man. One situation where you can't avoid probably is if you have male coworkers. There might be times where you do have to meet with them one-on-one, but don't meet with them socially one-on-one. If you have social functions for work, meet in group settings and then don't linger afterwards. Another piece of advice I have with this is use this as an opportunity to nurture your female friendships. There might be times when you do need a little help or support, and those are the people that you want to lean on. Other women who are in relationships that you admire. Those are going to be the people who have your best interest at heart and are going to be able to give you really good, wise advice. My next piece of advice to avoid the negative aspects of hypergamy would be to simply focus on his better qualities. Now, it could be true that your man could help with the dishes more, or his habit of leaving the toilet seat up is repulsive. Maybe you would have preferred a more extravagant anniversary gift. But it is also true that you can choose to overlook these little annoyances and focus on the things that he's really great at. Maybe he's good at helping put the kids to bed, or focus on that he's happy to provide for you and your family, or just any nice little acts of kindness and service that he does for you. Whatever it is that he is good at. For every one thing that you find yourself becoming annoyed at, find 3 more things that you love about him. If you are able to successfully manage to see your man at his very best, then you are also going to be very effectively squashing those little hypergamous nudges that would make you question if you could do better elsewhere. And on that note, I am sure that you would also be very appreciative of him if he took that same sort of generous attitude towards your own faults. Thus far, we have been looking at hypergamy only in its negative aspects. And hypergamy is often viewed in a less than charitable light. But we also need to remember that hypergamy has an important function in female selection and in the successful propagation of the human species. Hypergamy helps women select the best men who will be able to successfully provide and protect for offspring. That said, let's analyze how hypergamy can actually be good and how we can harness that for the better. Hypergamy can actually, within a relationship, help you recognize opportunities to improve that. If you're married or in a long-term relationship and you start to notice that you're, say, fantasizing about other men, or getting annoyed at really small things, or becoming increasingly discontent with larger problems, it could be your hypergamy speaking. And this does not mean that you need to immediately end your relationship or start seeking out a new man. But it could actually be a little bit of a hint that there are things that you could improve within your relationship. If you are happy with your man, but say for some reason can't stop fantasizing about the dad on your kid's soccer team, then that doesn't mean that you should start a torrid affair with this guy. What it might mean is that maybe you could use a little fresh infusion of fun and excitement in your marriage with your husband. Maybe you find yourself becoming emotionally closer to a man who's not your husband. So instead of starting an emotional affair with this guy, instead analyze, what is it that draws you to him? And is there a way that you could get that need fulfilled by your husband? Try it. And if not, that's okay too. We often think that our spouses need to fulfill our every emotional need at all times. And that's just not realistic. Even though that's not realistic, it doesn't mean that you need to just find a new man to fill in the gap. You can lean on friends and your community. You can start hobbies and take care of yourself. There are different ways that you can fulfill needs that your spouse is unable to fulfill for you. Maybe within your relationship, you find that you and your spouse are arguing frequently, or feel like you have another child instead of a husband. This is something that happens a lot, and you start to wonder what life would be like without him or with another man. First, I want you to take a deep breath and thank your hypergamous nature for pointing out that there's something that needs to be worked on. And then next, I recommend you go and check out my video on male leadership and inspiring with that within your man. Because if you feel like you have another child on your hands, then that is a leadership issue. So I have a whole lot of thoughts on that issue. We won't cover them here because that would take way too much time. Sometimes you might find yourself thinking about other men because you're experiencing things outside of the relationship, a lot of life and external pressures. These could be things like money troubles or illness, or just like the stresses of raising young children. And you might start to wonder if life would be a little bit easier if you were with somebody else. I doubt it. Remember that the grass is not always greener. There are always going to be life stresses. So, and especially if they are not coming from your partner, if you were to leave your relationship, those are still going to exist wherever you go. So it's best that you learn to deal with them where you're at. Make the effort to work on your coping strategies. And instead of finding a new relationship, attack the actual problem. Find ways to reduce whatever stress it is that you're in. So sometimes your little hypergamous urges are just nature on overdrive, or clues to elements in your relationship that you can improve upon. But another way that hypergamy can be really good is that sometimes your hypergamous urges are a very real indication that your relationship is not a good one. And maybe it's time to move on. You might be lying to yourself that the man you've been living with for the past 5 years is one day going to propose to you, but you know deep down that that man is never going to marry you. Your hypergamy could be trying to give you the little nudge to move on to someone who wants to be with you just as much as you want to be with him. Maybe you find yourself overwhelmed and annoyed with your boyfriend who spends every spare second of his time in video games, and you're tired of cleaning up his Cheeto dust and empty energy drink bottles. Your instincts could be telling you that this guy is not the best wagon to hitch all your hopes and dreams on. Maybe you're someone who feels guilty about thinking about someone else lying in bed with a man who constantly berates and belittles you. I'm just telling you, you should not have to accept that sort of poor treatment from others, and you would truly be better off with someone else. Now, I'm not saying that in any of these sorts of cases that you should cheat on your man, but it could be time to break things off. Obviously, if you are married and there are children involved, that is not like the first conclusion that I would jump to. I would advise that you try to work on yourself before you jump to that sort of conclusion. So hypergamy can actually, in some cases, be really good. It can help you fix problems within your relationship. It can tell you when it's genuinely time to move on. The problem is that sometimes you just get a little overly anxious about things. Nature has given us a great many instinctual responses, one of them being the fight or flight response. This is that instinct that tells us whether we should fight off danger or run from it. Thankfully, we're not fighting off saber tooths and running from flash floods most days, I hope. We can all be very grateful for this. The problem lies that the instinct still exists, and some of us, it exists very strongly. And these people are constantly on the lookout for potential danger, all this anxiety. And the anxious woman is going to be someone who is going to be very prone to being overly hypergamous. She is going to be very prone to neurotic thoughts concerning her relationships, along with everything else in her life. So she is very likely to suffer from things like being too picky, or maybe she struggles to let go of men because she has this extreme fear of not being able to find someone, or maybe she constantly questions the relationship she's already in. This neurotic type woman is also going to be having a lot of anxious thoughts in regards to her relationship. She might constantly suspect the really faithful and devoted man of having wandering eyes, or maybe she's constantly worrying about how he feels about her when it's really clear that he's over the moon about her. If this describes you at all, you might want to look into some coping methods. This might be therapy, or if you have a really bad medication, it might be meditation, or getting into your philosophy, or leaning on religion, learning calming techniques, making sure that you are getting adequate sleep and eating a healthy diet. Another type of woman who might be really prone to being overly hypergamous would be someone who has had a lot of trauma. It is an unfortunate reality. This would be things like abuse, especially sexual abuse, and maybe absent fathers, or moms who just had lots of different boyfriends coming in and out. What happened to you isn't your fault, but you still may be carrying around the burden of your experience. Low self-esteem and attachment issues could be sabotaging your relationships. And if this is you, I'm truly sorry for your experience. And if you're really in the thick of these issues and having trouble getting into relationships or keeping them, or being in really unhealthy relationships, then instead of seeking a man to fulfill you, I would really recommend that you voluntarily just take some time off from dating and focus on working on yourself. And if you have really severe issues, this will probably look like a therapist who specializes in your troubles and doing the really hard and painful work of healing from that past. Then, when you are ready for a relationship, it is going to be a much more fulfilling experience, and you're going to be in a better position to attract better men. Scrolling through social media and the manosphere and red pill contents and just the internet in general, it can easily make a woman feel bad about herself simply for being a woman. Well, guess what? The action of cheating is bad, and that applies to women and men. Having a hypergamous instinct does not make you bad or inherently untrustworthy. Being aware of hypergamy and being able to recognize it as it's happening will help you be able to minimize any harmful effects, but also maximize for the best possible outcomes in your relationships. I know that this has been a little bit of a different talk about hypergamy than you may be used to, but I hope that it's been a constructive one. It is my hope that you are able to embrace your feminine nature, including hypergamy.